Well, welcome everybody. It's been a while. You know who I am. I'm Geoff Perlman. I'm the founder and CEO of Xojo. I want to thank the team at Monkey Bread Software, Christian Schmidt and his team. I know that putting on a conference like this is a lot of work. It's way more work than it looks. They're making it look really easy, but it's actually a lot of work, a lot of coordination over a lot of time. So please give them a round of applause for doing this. Okay, so if you have any questions during the presentation, just make note of them, however you do that on paper, electronically, in your own mind. And we'll have some time at the end. I just want to make sure I get through everything. And I'm not the only person here from Xojo. Javier, Ricardo, and Gabriel are here from Xojo Europe. So make sure you get a chance to talk to them, ask them questions, bug them about your favorite feature requests, etc. Robin could not be here as he is quite busy in Africa on safari. He actually took this picture. That's not a stock photo. Yeah, so that was pretty cool. Anytime he goes to Africa, we get really interesting pictures, and I always look forward to them. All right, well, since we last met, that was in 2024 here in Andernach. Since then, just a few statistics. We fixed 1,117 bugs over that period of time, 2 years. That's a lot. Yeah. And we've added 480 features. When I look at these numbers, I'm kind of like, wow, that's a big number. But you know, not every feature is huge. Some features are tiny, and even a tiny feature can make a big difference if it's the thing that you desperately need for your project. So, yeah. So what was in progress back in 2024 when we met here? Well, we were working on privacy settings for iOS, web optimizations, database connections, which is new, more updates to dbKit, grid control. This has got to be the most requested feature of all time, and I'm glad that we finally got that done. Updating the Windows framework to the look and feel of Windows 10/11. Preemptive threads. And libraries. These things were all on my slides from last time. They were all in progress. So we're now in 2026, which is, God, that's just so bizarre. I remember as a kid, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid and I thought about the year 2000, that seemed really far away. And now here we are in 2026. But no flying cars. I don't quite get that. Well, of that list, I'm happy to say we've actually delivered all of it. All of this has been delivered. The Windows framework, there's still a couple of things left. We need to do menus, toolbars, and the window itself. But all the controls at this point are done. So sometime soon, we'll have an option. You know, basically, when we get it all done, we'll start making that the default when you build an app. And you can turn it off if you don't want it. But we're getting really close on that. Preemptive threads is interesting. I remember a time back in, I want to say 2007, we had a customer who was desperately wanted us to have preemptive threads, and he was willing to pay whatever it would take for us to add them. It was actually a company, not an individual. And I sat down with William and I said, you know, what would be involved in supporting preemptive threads? And the answer was that would be prohibitively expensive, because the entire Xojo framework would have to be made thread safe. And it's amazing how things change, because here we are, and we've got preemptive threads now. But you know, some of that was us, some of that's operating system changes, that sort of thing. So it's really great to have them. And libraries is another one that we've wanted for a very, very long time, and it's great to finally have it. Those are very big features from a development point of view. Libraries was an entire year of work by itself, for example. On the mobile front, Android versus iOS. When Android first came out, it was very, very basic, but we've reached the point now where we're very close to parity now between Android and iOS. The two things that are missing for Android are the XML classes. We have users still using XML. I know most people use JSON, but we still have them, so we need the XML classes. And the other is libraries. Those are not yet supported for Android, but we are working on that. So let's talk about the roadmap going forward. So of course I mentioned libraries. That's on the list for Android. Unicode support for PDF. If that's important to you, make sure you tell Javier, because that's on his list. We have, like I said, the remaining stuff that needs to be done for Windows 10 and 11, the toolbar, the window, and menus. Web SEO compatibility, so that search engines can index your web apps. That's on our list. And this is an interesting one. Desktop control baseline, default size improvements. This is one of those things where you've probably just gotten used to this, and so you don't realize how much of a problem it is. You know, you shouldn't have to do so much work to get the baseline of, say, a label lined up with a control. That should be just kind of an automatic thing. And it's actually not easy to do, especially cross-platform. You know, setting things right, people are writing a little bit of code to adjust them on one platform or the other. So we've got that on our list because I really want to see us make that. That should be a non-thing. That should just work. You know, it's like dragging a control onto a layout. You don't do anything else. You just drag it and position it. Same thing. This should just work out of the box. So that's an item on the list. Control locking for iOS. So all of the other targets support control locking. iOS is the odd man out. And we're going to bring control locking to iOS. We'll still have constraints. You'll still be able to do constraints. But for a lot of things, control locking is enough. We want people to be able to use control locking. And a command line compiler. This is a big change for us to convert the existing compiler so it acts as a command line compiler. A big benefit to this for you is build automation, right? Because you can completely control that from soup to nuts, as they say. We also have some internal projects that will help us as well, but again, that's a really, really big project for us, command line compiler. And last but not least, so this is a feature I've wanted for almost 30 years, and that is a single project format. What this means is the ability for you to, instead of creating a desktop project or a web project or a mobile project or a console project, you just create a project. And you can then have inside that project everything for the desktop, mobile, console, and web versions of that project, which makes sharing code really, really easy, right? We're still figuring out the user interface for this, but what I'm imagining is rather than creating a mobile screen or a web page or a desktop window, you simply create a layout, and that layout can be shared, or there can be sub-layouts if you need to say, oh, I need my mobile version to be different from my desktop version. But there'll be a single object that you access in your code that is the layout, regardless of what type of layout it is. So that's what I'm really, really looking forward to. And control locking is something we need for that because, for iOS, because we have it for all the other platforms. So we've managed some big projects in the past, and we have a few on our roadmap. We've never been afraid of big projects. We've accomplished many in the past. I feel like Xojo is something that, because it's a development tool, it kind of has to always be on a treadmill, right? I've watched other development tools over the years go away because they just didn't keep up with what was going on in the world of computing. And we work in a area of society where things are constantly changing, right? So we have to stay ahead. So I wanted to briefly look at some of those big projects that we've handled over the years. For example, when we started, Xojo supported the Motorola 68000 and PowerPC processors, We haven't supported either of those in many, many years. Now Intel and ARM, right? The Xojo IDE was originally written in C++. In fact, all of the Xojo code was in C++. It was 500,000 lines between the IDE and the frameworks. Now the IDE is entirely written in Xojo itself. That was a very interesting transition because prior to that, the team that was building Xojo wasn't using Xojo, right? So they couldn't relate to the issues customers were having because they weren't users themselves, right? So that's why it was really important to me personally that we build Xojo in Xojo so that we would be users just as you are. Project types. When we first started, we had just desktop. Now we have desktop, console, web, and mobile. Operating systems. The first version was supporting classic Mac OS only, or what we now refer to as classic Mac OS. Now we support, well, it's now called Mac OS. That's confusing, but Mac OS 10, Windows, Linux, web, iOS, and Android. So that's a big change. I mean, it's interesting to look at sort of the then and see that a lot of that stuff that doesn't even happen anymore. It doesn't even exist, right? Let's see. What's going on? It's not. There we go. Frameworks. They were originally written entirely in C++. Now there is a variety of languages, C++, Objective-C, JavaScript, Kotlin, and Xojo. We write more and more of the framework in Xojo. If we can write it in Xojo, we write it in Xojo. There are some things that's just not possible. Like for Android, it has to be in Kotlin, right? But when we can write it in Xojo, we do. The compiler. How many of you have been around since, like, say, version 3 of our product, way back? Okay, not that many. Okay. Well, originally it was 2 single-pass compilers, one for Mac, one for Windows, entirely separate. And what would happen is we go to fix a bug, and it's fixed in, like, for Mac, let's say, but not for Windows, because it turns out that bug exists on the other side, too. They weren't sharing any code. And that's not a very modern way to design a compiler. So one day, one of the engineers came to me and said, we need to redesign the compiler from scratch. And I said, and he explained why. And I said, okay. He said, modern compilers are a 2-pass system. You have a front end that understands the language and a back end that converts that to machine code. And I said, that makes sense to me. How long is that going to take? And he said, 3 years. And I was like, 3 years? And to his credit, his estimate was almost exactly right. It took nearly exactly 3 years. But we did it, and that was a good thing because when ARM came along, for example, we had switched to LLVM as our back-end compiler. It supports ARM, so we didn't have to do that work. It's also an optimizing compiler, so you get to have optimized code, and that didn't cost us anything other than rewriting the compiler from scratch. Aside from that, it didn't cost us anything. So anyway, and some last things, APIs. As you guys know, if you've been around long enough, we went through a conversion from version 1 of the APIs to version 2 for consistency. A lot of people complained about that, and I knew that over time that would go away. Once you get used to using version 2 of the APIs, it's so consistent that you can kind of see the purpose of it. So that was another big change. And last but not least, our documentation. If you've been with us long enough, you used to get the big stacked documentation, the spiral bound. Now, of course, that's all online. We can update it instantly, etc. So we've gone through a lot of changes, and what I've seen in other development tools is they don't do this. They're not constantly changing the product and updating it, and as a result, they don't last. Most of the development tools that were around when we started no longer exist, right? As Christian said, this month is 30 years. I did not expect to be doing this for 30 years, but I've enjoyed every minute of it. It just goes to show that you can plan all you want, but be ready to adapt, because life isn't always going to go exactly the way you had planned. And speaking of that, that's why we've existed, why we've survived for so long, our ability to adapt and change. As I said, there's a lot of tools that couldn't do that for whatever reason, and they're not here anymore. And there's another big change that we're going through right now, and that change is AI. Now, I've been waiting for AI since I was 15 years old. So, I was playing around with whatever you could not even call AI. It's like Cro-Magnon man compared to Homo sapien. It was like expert systems and things like that, and they weren't even anywhere close. But AI finally arrived, not quite in the form I thought it would. I was imagining C-3PO, and we're not quite at C-3PO yet, but it is an amazing technology. It's something that's impacting society, across the board. I think in the end, it's going to have a bigger impact on society than the personal computer had. That remains to be seen, but that's what I think. So let's talk about Xojo and AI. Well, we started with Jade. Jade is great for answering questions about Xojo. It's so much better than having to search documentation and read pages. Almost everybody in this room is pretty comfortable with Xojo, so you maybe don't have to do much more than look up what's the second parameter to that again, or that kind of thing. But for somebody new to the product, Jade is a game changer, because they can ask questions in the way they want to ask them, right? I wish I had something like this for products I was learning over the years. It's amazing. It's like you've got this expert user sitting next to you that'll answer every question you have. Jade is great for that. The thing is that one weakness with Jade is that when you want it to generate code or work with your project, there's copy and paste that has to happen, right? You can take a method, paste it into Jade, and ask questions about it, and if it makes changes, copy and paste them back, or press the insert button, that kind of thing. So we want to resolve that, and we're going to do that with what I call Jade 2. Jade 2 will be able to directly assist you with your project, directly. What does that mean? Well, you'll be able to tell it things like, find the off by one bug in the totals method of my accounts class, right? Just write in Jade, you say that, and it will be able to access your project and work with it. Or, please do a code review of my entire project. I've done this, and it's surprising the stuff you get. It's actually really, really useful. The moment you can do this, you're going to do it for every project. And you're going to go, wow, I had no idea that bug was there. And we're making progress on this. So here you've got the Xojo IDE. This is a simple project. We've got a calculate class with a calc method. And over here, we've got the Jade window, and the user has typed the calc method, and the calculate class is supposed to accept two values, or average two values, and something's going wrong. What's the problem? And Jade has come back and said what the problem was and given the correct version, at which point you could just click insert and replace the existing code. Obviously, this is a very simple example, but it gives you an idea that you can just talk to it about your project, and it can directly work with that project. And this is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot more you can do. In this case, it's asking for, if you want to follow up on some other things, but that's the idea, is to be able to talk to Jade and have it access the project directly and manipulate it as well. So no more copy and pasting. Now, we're not limiting AI access to just Jade. There are coding tools, Codex, Claude Code, Gemini, and others. And we're working to make Xojo work seamlessly with these tools. What this basically means, how many of you have used one of these tools? Wow, okay. It's nearly 100%. Well, so you know then that it's you tell it to do something, and then you close the project and reopen the project, and you're doing all that mess. That's all going to go away. We're working on making the IDE so that it detects changes to files in your project, and as soon as it detects them, it just reloads them. So that means, yeah, thank you. So that means you tell your external tool to do something, it does it, the IDE detects it, and it just refreshes in front of your eyes. So totally seamless support for these tools. But we're not going to stop there. We also have plans for Jade 3. Basically, what Jade 3 is going to be is the ability for you to ask Jade to create a project from scratch. So you'll be able to say, hey, here's one sentence, create a project that does the following. Or here's an entire plan, right? A developer showed me a fairly extensive plan he created for an app, gave it to his, I think it was Claude Code he was using, and it generated the entire app, right? I think one of the things we are all going to have to learn to do is become experts at communicating with AI. Because it's not as simple as just, here's what I want in some very simple form. The more detailed description you give it, the better the results. AIs will take the path of least resistance if you allow them to. So that means thinking ahead about where you're taking the app and starting on the right foot. So anyway, we want users to be able to use just Jade if they want to, but that's sort of the order. Updating Jade, then the IDE, and then a second update to Jade 3. So, and of course, sorry, let me add one more thing. AI is going to keep changing, right? And we will keep changing right along with it. It's an exciting time, honestly. Like I said, it's strange to have a machine that can communicate with you like another human being. That's a very interesting moment that we have reached as a species. And I'm really excited about where it's going to go. There are pluses and minuses to that, and we will deal with them as a society. But I don't think we should be scared. There is a promise of AI. Some people are threatened by AI. They see it as a competitor to them. That's not how I see it. I see AI as simply another tool. The personal computer was a tool. Programming languages are a tool. AI is a tool as well. And it's one that helps everybody in this room be more productive, right? AI itself isn't really the threat. The threat would be if another person knows how to use it really well and you don't. They're the threat, not AI, right? So it is really important to get to know this technology and get very, very comfortable with it. It's also really what Xojo has always been about, right? Xojo is about making it faster and easier to build applications. Well, AI is like a volume control on that. You just turn up the volume, right? So it's really, really important for productivity. And for people new to programming, this is just a godsend because it gets them started. They can say, I'm trying to build an app that does this, and they get enough that they can now start learning and incrementally improving it. Because learning anything incrementally provides enormous encouragement, right? If you have to climb all the way to the top of the mountain before you get anything, there aren't a lot of people that will do that, right? But if you can slowly but surely make your way up the mountain, that encourages people to keep going, and that's one of the things that AI will give us. So AI is not a competitor. AI is a partner. That's the way to think of it. Now, I started this company because I wanted a tool like Xojo. I wanted to use it. If the tool existed, then I would have just used it like all of you. But It didn't exist, so I went about building a company that could provide it to the world. I am a Xojo user, just like you guys. I write apps in Xojo. I've helped automate processes at the company. There are the process that creates the release notes, for example, is a console app I wrote. Anything I can do to help. And it's important for me because if I'm going to provide the vision for the product, I need to use it. I need to, and the other thing is I like using it. I mean, honestly, it's easy for me to just, watch a week vanish because I'm building some app to help the company in Xojo. So my personal project at Xojo is dbKit. I showed it for the first time 2 years ago here at the same conference, and I've been working on it ever since. My goal with dbKit is essentially to take the grunt work out of getting data from a database in and out of the interface. That is the goal. So 2 years ago, I showed dbKit version 1. There have been 10 updates to it since then. So today, I'm going to be showing you dbKit version 2. It's a significant upgrade from version 1. And it has a few goals. First, to continue to make it even faster and easier. To add more functionality to save you time in development. And here's one important one I ran into while working with version 2 or building version 2. And that is to support less than ideally designed database schemas. I've run into them myself. I was a consultant before I did what I do now. And sometimes I had to deal with a database schema that I couldn't change. And especially in large corporations, there may be someone in charge of the database, and you can build your front end to it, no problem at all, but you can't change the schema. And maybe the schema wasn't designed the best it possibly could be, charitably speaking. And we'll come back to that. I have more to say about that. So let me show you a demo. Okay. All right, so I'm going to switch. Okay. All right. So here we have an empty Xojo project. I've copied in the dbKit module, and it has some supporting icons. dbKit's eventually going to ship as a library, but for now, it's still just source. And for those of you that haven't, how many have not used or seen dbKit before? Just a few of you. Okay, I'm going to do just a quick demo just to bring everybody up to speed. And this will also show you some changes that have happened in this version as well. In the first version, there was a table connection class. You dragged that out, put it on your layout, and then you told it what database to use and what table and all that stuff, and it had some events and things. Now there's a new class called a dbKit window. So I can select the window, and I can go to the inspector and simply change it to dbKit window. Once you do that, there's now a dbKit section in the inspector for the layout. Let me add a database connection. One of the nice perks of being the CEO is I can tell the engineering team to add features for me. Okay. So let me add one here. Let's see here. Where was that? Demos. Yeah, there it is. Okay, Eddie's Electronics. All right, so now we've got a database. I'll go back to the window, and now I can choose the database. Okay, and I can tell it what the customer's table. You can indicate a where clause, order by, limit, and you can define relationships now. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I've also made this version completely localizable. So anything that dbkit presents that you aren't adding yourself, the error messages, that sort of thing, you see them all here. They're all completely localizable. You can swap these out with constants or just type the text in yourself, but it's completely localizable. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'm going to build a quick interface. I'm going to bring out a search field. Let's do that. And a list box. Okay, and let's get a couple of fields. Well, let's wait on the fields, actually. Okay, so I'm going to make this 2 columns, and I'm going to put in a header first, last. Okay, and I'm going to go down to the dbkit section, and I'm going to tell it that the column names are first name and last name. Okay, good so far. Haven't written any code yet, and I shouldn't need to. So we'll hit run, and oh, where's my window? It's there somewhere. Oh, okay, hang on a second. Maybe the app for some reason, oh yeah, look at that. Doesn't know where the window is, okay. All right, and there it is. So dbkit automatically selects all the rows if it doesn't have a criteria. You notice that the search field automatically knows what fields it's searching because it went and found the list box and looked at the columns, and by default it displays their column names. You can tell the search field what columns you actually want it to search if you don't want it to search them all, but I can, it'll search, either column. For example, first name or last name in this case. Okay. Then if I want to be able to edit or actually look at a specific row, let's go back to the library, and I'm going to grab a, there it is. I'm not used to this, having listed this way. There it is, text field. Okay, and I'll drag that out, and I'm just going to duplicate that a couple of times. Okay. And then I'm going to change this field name to first name, and this one to last name, and this one to city. Okay. You can name the control to match the name of the column, but you can also, in the dbkit section, indicate the column name. If for some reason the column name, the control name needs to be different from the column name for your own programming style or whatever, it looks at the column name first. If that's blank, it looks at the control name. There's also a display name. If the dbkit ever needs to display the name of a control, that's what it'll display. Again, it will go from that, if that's blank, to the control name, but if you want to make it a little nicer, maybe you have first name is all together, you want it first space name, that kind of thing. You also have some settings for things like mandatory. A couple things I've added, trim spaces. So if you turn that on, then when the user leaves the field, it automatically does a trim on the left and right in case they typed in spaces. You can also set it to title case. That's really kind of nice because like you're typing in an address and it just automatically title cases as you type. That'll be great for users. Just some little formatting stuff. And again, here's an example of where there's an initial value or an invalid value message. If the value is invalid, you can localize this message to your heart's content. Okay, so let's try that. Okay, and as you can see, as I click around, it's just automatically filling in those fields. They are read-only by default because you're not in edit mode yet. So let's add edit mode. So I'm going to add an edit button. And I think that should be all I need. Let's see. Okay, click on a record, click edit. Suddenly the controls become editable. And I can change the name and hit done. As you can see, it updates the list box automatically. Again, I haven't written any code yet, right? This is all just happening. So, and there are other buttons you can add, undo, new, delete, all the normal stuff you're used to in a database application. Yeah, so there's a lot more to it than that. But I'm not going to build a whole interface here. I just want to give you a brief demo of how you get started. So now I'm going to switch over to my example project. Okay, so this is the example project. I'm going to show you it first. Okay, so this is more fully developed. There's more fields. There's pop-up menus. This is called the editing button rather. And you can pick which of those controls you want. Do you want delete? Do you want new? Do you want undo, etc.? You click edit. It switches into edit mode. If I change this and then press undo, it undoes it. It basically reloads the row back into the interface. And I'm using SQLite, but this supports Postgres, MySQL, ODBC. Yeah. So, and again, you just add a database connection for Postgres or MySQL, whatever, and then pick your tables from that. It's that simple. There's nothing different you have to do. And things like, these dialogues, those are built in. Again, they're localizable. I now have, I have some sophisticated number fields. You'll see sales region is a number field. If I go to edit, I can't, I can type numbers, but I can't type letters. And if the value is not valid, it'll tell you that because there's minimum, maximum for number fields. And again, that message is completely localizable. You can also choose a percentage. I'll show you that in a minute. And one of the things that is not consistent in the Xojo framework for controls is a date time picker. The date time picker looks different or operates differently on Mac, Windows, and Linux. I figured in a database application that doesn't really work. So this is actually a custom control for DBKit. It's not the date time picker. It's a canvas-based date time picker. And oops, I got to make that a value that it accepts. Okay. But it works just like the date time picker that you're used to. It does all the same things. It's got arrows and it won't let you type in an invalid date, all that kind of stuff. So if we go to the layout, here's the layout itself. Let's go to the inspector. You can see for this number field in the DBKit area, you can choose number, currency, percentage, or custom. You can indicate if you want a 1,000 separator, how many decimal places, minimum, maximum values. And once again, the messages that come up can be localized here if the user typed in a value that doesn't meet your criteria. For pop-up menus, you can indicate if you want it to auto-populate the pop-up menu from another table. So if you turn that on, you just indicate the table you want. You indicate the column. And then you can indicate whether you want it to store in the database the column value or the primary key. So if you're just storing the primary key in that table for this related value, just pick primary key and it takes care of it from there. Nothing else you have to do. And again, with the editing control, you simply turn on these options for whether you want it. Delete row, new row, undo row changes, edit row. And delete related rows means if you delete, say, the customer, it will delete all the invoices. So it does that automatically. It'll do all the joins and everything for you. You don't have to worry about that. Okay. All right, now let's look at another layout so I can show you some other things it can do. Okay, so this is another table. This is invoices, and I've substantially improved the search field. As you can see, it's showing a hint of what it's going to search, but you can do a lot with the search field, again, without writing any code at all. So for example, if I type in 8747, Okay, it looks at the numeric columns and automatically searches those because it knows that what I typed in was a numeric value, right? Or I can say 10 slash 1121. Oh, I gotta turn off. No, that's expected actually. I forgot to turn off break on exceptions. This is a case where I'm actually relying on an exception, right? Because I'm getting a value and turning it into a date, and I need to know if it's a valid date, right? So anyway, so there you can see it's matching on the date, but I can also type in 2021. It knows that. And for those of you here in Europe, this is completely locale savvy. So you can type in the date the way you expect it to based on the locale of the computer, and it will understand how to do that. It also does things like this. I can go greater than 10,000, right? And once again, it recognizes that what I typed in was a numeric value. It looks at the numeric fields only and searches them. You can also do nifty things like this. You can do 500 ... 1,000, right? So you can do a range. That's built in, okay? Less than, all the stuff you expect. Now, if the user can't remember how this works, if they just hover over the search field, there's an explanation of all the different ways that they can search. You can also do things like this. If they want to narrow it to a single column, you can type in the name, not the name of the column in the database, the name that they see on the screen, right? Equals 7700, right? So they can do that as well. That's all built into the search field. It also does joins when it needs to. So for example, I can type in Weber, right? Or there's Webster there too. But it's doing the join for you, so you don't have to do any of that. And this is also an example of where you might want to have the list layout separate from the entry layout. So for example, if I double click on a row, I get a separate window that shows the invoice itself. And you can see we've got a related table. dbKit version 1 didn't handle related tables at all. That was completely left up to you. This version handles it all for you. You put a list box on the layout, you give it a different table name, you tell it what columns you want, and all the joins happen automatically. So I can click Edit, and okay, well, I can't click Edit. Okay. That's what I get for not testing that one before making a change. All right, so anyway, you click Edit, you can add, you can delete, etc. The way this particular example works is in Edit mode. If you click Choose, it brings up a dialog where I can choose another customer. This is also using dbKit. That's just a layout with a dbKit container, which is something new as well. So now you have containers in dbKit, and I'll show you that in a minute. Oh, yeah, see, that's that same bug. Okay. That's why this version isn't shipping yet, by the way. Did I say that? Yeah. A couple of exceptions left to deal with. Okay, so anyway, but you can see that you can have related rows now, and I'm going to show you what that looks like behind the scenes. So let's go to, well, there's the search layout. And the thing I'm always proud about in this example is I can open it up, and there's one event handler. That's just doing something special for SQLite, but that's in this example. But other than that, you can see that there's there's double pressed events. So if you want to open a new layout, right, when the user double clicks, then you just return an instance of the layout, and dbKit handles it for you. And for something new, you obviously have to make a new window. But aside from that, that's really all there is. So there's very little in the way of code. So let's look at invoice details. Here's the list box. You can see I've got the table name. It's invoice items, right? And here are the column names. So if the column comes from that table, you just put the column name. If you want to show a column from a related table, like the price of the product, you just put the table name dot and the column name. and it will automatically then do the join for you. Line total in this case isn't a column at all. In other words, it's not in the database. Sometimes you need to display columns that are calculated, right? So what you do there is there's an event, row changed, and you simply do your calculation. So in this case, me.column value line total, double value equals quantity times price, that sort of thing. And I want to force my product code to be uppercase. That's just a nicety. And then I'm updating the line total. There's a sum function built into dbkit, so you just tell it what column to sum, and it does it for you. And again, all of the loading of related rows, joins, all that stuff is handled automatically for the interface. And again, looking at this, you can see that most of these controls have no code at all. There's a row loaded event. I'm going to talk about the events in a little bit. This is just formatting some data, and this is just clearing a few columns when a new row is created. Now, sometimes you need multiple tables, unrelated tables, on the same layout, right? And my example for that is maintenance. So this is just like a database maintenance type of window. So it's got a table for sales reps, another one for states with their abbreviations. And I can edit these, right? I can undo, I can delete, make new ones. I'll add myself. Okay, but these are unrelated tables. And the way you do this is, again, I mentioned it earlier, a dbkit container. So if we go and look here, we'll see here's the maintenance window. It's just two containers and a couple of labels. And if we look, let's see, there we go. If we look at this is a dbkit container. You can see it up here, the super dbkit container. And you just build it as a layout like you would any data entry layout. I've got a list box. In this case, it's just one column. And I've got a text field that's set to name. And I've got an editing button. So you can see there's no code in here at all. And it just takes care of it. So if you need to have multiple unrelated tables on a layout, a dbkit container is the best choice there. You can also have, as was the case in version 1, you can have container or other layouts that don't have a list at all. This one's just doing a query and then presenting them without a list. And this button is built in for navigation. The toolbar buttons are also supported automatically. And I created this little extra control. If you want to see how controls work, this is not a it's a dbkit aware control, but it's not part of dbkit, this little rating control. But it's a good example of a control. Okay, so that's the quick demo. Oh, sorry, there's one more thing. One more thing I want to show you, and that is how we deal with relationships. Let's go to invoice details. So how does it know how to load the line items or invoice items for an invoice? How does it know that? Well, it knows that because you define table relationships in the inspector. So basically, you just tell it what the relationships are. Invoices.customerID equals customers.id, right? Invoice items.invoice number equals invoices.invoice number. So you're just telling it what the foreign and primary keys are that are equal. You do that on the layout, and it now can understand those, and it will automatically load all the related columns. If you just say, I want this customer name here, as long as you've defined the table relationship, then it will automatically take care of it for you. So that's how you do that. And that's going to be important as we go back to my slides. All right, so let's see. And let's see if I get this right. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so another big change is that layouts now have this concept of a current row. So there's a current row property in a dbkit window or a dbkit container. So if you need to access the row that the user is working with, whether it's a column in the interface or not, Doesn't matter. It could be a column they never see. You can just access the current row property, and what you get back is one of these, a dbkit.row. It's a class. It will contain the entire row, and it takes care of a lot of the grunt work for you. For example, it has a column name, right? So you can get and set values. Is new. This will tell you if this row is a new row or it's an existing row, right? So is new will be true if the row has not been inserted into the table yet. Is being edited. This tells you that the user is currently editing the row, right? Save. That does exactly what you expect it to do. But what's nice about this is you don't have to think, is this a new row, so I'm going to insert it? Is it a row that needs to be updated? No, you just say save, and whatever that means, it will get done, whether that's inserting a row or updating an existing row. Undo. Whatever changes the users make, you call undo, and they'll all be undone. Actually, before we get to the parent row, what I do with undo is when a row gets loaded, when a dbkit.row is loaded, I keep a copy of the row. So there's the row, there's the contents that the user is editing, and there's the row that as it originally was loaded. And what that allows me to do is make comparisons to see if the row's changed, but it also allows me to undo, because when you when you call undo, it simply swaps the column values back into the edited version of the row. Parent row. You give it a table name, and it will return a dbkit.row that is the parent row for the current row for that table. So you got an invoice, you want the customer, you just pass it customers, and bang, you've got the related customer. There's no query to do. It takes care of that for you. You got the primary key value, obviously. Has changed will simply tell you, has the row changed since it was loaded? That's really simple, straightforward. And more. But those are the big things in a dbkit.row. Now, dbkit.row is also layout aware. What that means is that if you change a column in the current row, and that column is bound to a control on the screen will update, right? So if your logic is saying, hey, I need to change this column, if that column happens to be displayed, it's just automatically going to update. You don't have to do that. It takes care of that for you. Now, all of the layouts in dbkit and the controls have events. We saw a few of those. Row changed means the row's been changed. And by the way, tense matters here. So for example, row created, that's past tense, right? So, and row changed, past tense. So the thing has already happened. The row has already been changed. The row has already been created. Row deleted, the row's already been deleted. And all of these events get past the dbkit.row itself. So in these events, you'll have a parameter that is the row that the action took place on, right? So if you need to know, if you need to look at the row after it was deleted, you still have it, right? Okay. Row editing, that's present tense, right? It means the row is currently being edited, which is great because you can make changes to it based on your logic. Row loaded, the row's been loaded. Row not selected. This happens if you've got controls on the screen, the user does a search, the search results in nothing. There is no matching row. That means there's no row selected, so that's when that fires. And row saving. That means that the row has not been saved yet, but it's in the process of being saved. So it gives you the opportunity to make changes to the row based on your logic or whatever before it actually gets saved. So row saving. Okay. Ambiguous table relationships. That's the kindest way I could come up with saying that. Bad schemas, right? I've dealt with this. If you've ever dealt with databases, you've probably come across this. And this is my favorite example. This is just horrible, right? The invoices table has two different columns that point to customers. People do this because they want to have billing and shipping customers, but that's not how you do that. Customers points to companies, but also to sales reps, which points to companies. Products points to sales reps, but also to companies. And then we've got boxes here because products go in boxes. And so we've got the box that the whole shipment is going to go into, but we also have boxes for individual items. This is not a good schema, right? But the reality is, as I mentioned earlier, you don't always get to make that choice. You don't always get to say, oh, well, we're going to fix this. We're going to put a many table between invoices and customers, and we're going to fix this right up. Sometimes you don't have that ability to touch the schema. So I needed dbKit to be able to handle this mess, right? So how do you do that? Well, I do it with something I call via column. So what this allows you to do is tell dbKit when you're telling it which column a control is going to use, or a column in a list box, or an individual control, you can tell it how to get to the parent row. Normally, you just put the column name, right? But with via column, you add a colon and then the column name, the other column. So for example, you want to get the customer sales rep's name. Well, we have salesreps.name, customers.salesrepid. So now dbKit knows, the way I'm going to get this particular sales rep name is to go through the customer sales rep ID. If I want to get the one for the product, right, because they both point to sales reps, then I can still use salesrep.name and then products.salesrepid. So now it's going through the products table, right? So it's just the other column so that it knows how to find the row that you actually mean. It's just a way of handling terribly designed schemas and being able to do it by simply providing some information without having to write any code to do it. I've been dealing with databases my entire adult life, so I ran into this a lot, so I wanted to fix this. All right, so that's how you deal with table schemas that were really poorly designed. I've also added an SDK for dbKit version 2. So you can build your own dbKit aware controls. You don't have to use the ones that are built in if you need something special. And the way you do that is with interfaces. So there's a handful of interfaces. Row data control is basically just the interface that for anything that's showing data from a row, right? If it's showing data from the current row, that's the interface that you use. You implement, 7 or 8 methods, and then now you've got a dbKit aware data control. And that rating control I showed you with the stars, that's included, so you can just look at that to see how it's implemented. Row data image control is the same as a row data control. It just handles images. With images, you saw I had pictures of customers. I need to know how the image is being stored. Is it PNG, the format, PNG, bitmap, etc. And I need to know the resolution. So the only difference between these two is this provides those 2 additional bits of information. Row action control, that's anything that's operating on the row. So next, previous, edit, undo, something that's not showing data but taking action, right? That's what that's for. Edit special, so if you're going to provide your own edit control that switches between editing and non-editing, this adds an extra method for that. Row list control, list box, if you want to, anything's listing things like a pop-up menu, multiple rows essentially, that's what that interface is for. And this next one, I don't think anyone's going to use it, but if you really wanted to create your own layout, I don't think anyone will do that, but if you really did want to, if you just implemented the methods in this interface, you could have your own layout with your own controls on it. And last but not least, row event receiver, again, one you'll probably never use or need to implement. It simply is the thing that transmits the events to the controls. Like I said, these last 2 are just here for informational purposes. I doubt you'll ever need them. But if you want to make your own controls, you can now do it. Because that's another thing where you might, I don't want you to not be able to use dbKit because there's something missing, right? So if that something missing is that you need a special kind of control that I haven't provided, then you can create them yourself fairly easily. Okay, So that's dbKit version 2. I'm feature complete on the core engine at this point. Obviously, there's a couple of exceptions I need to take care of. I just did some changes at the last minute, and I should have known better. Anyway, the desktop layer is finished. My next step is to update the web layer, because dbKit version 1 supports the web, but I now need to take it for version 2 and update all the controls for the web. I do plan to have a mobile version as well. That'll come after the web version is updated. I've got some really interesting ideas about how to do that for servers, database servers, so that I've got some technology basically so that you as a developer can build a mobile app. It doesn't have to be a mobile app, but you could build a mobile app and do your coding the way you're used to coding with a single user database where it's completely synchronous. Now we know on mobile that's just not what happens. Once you go over the internet, everything has to be asynchronous. But I didn't like the idea that you'd have to code differently for that. So I've created some technology that allows you to code in a synchronous way and abstract you from the fact that what's really happening behind the scenes is asynchronous. But that's a demo for another time. I also need to update the documentation. So I've got a few things to do before I ship this version, but I'm getting really, really close, which is something the engineering team hears me say all the time. Really, really close. You guys know how that works, right? The last 20% takes 80% of the time, at least, or it feels that way. Anyway, all right, so that is dbKit. Now, I've got a few minutes for questions. Anyone have any questions? Anything at all? Yeah?
Yeah, confirming dbKit, is it possible when application is running to switch the database? Because we have Postgres database connected.
Yeah.
And sometimes our customers want to change the company they are working for.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. The database property itself on the layout is just a property. So if in your code you told it to switch that to a different database connection, for example, or even in code you created a database connection, you could just assign the database to that property, and hopefully all the tables are the same, obviously, but yes, you could absolutely do that. And you can have any number of databases connected to a single application. What I mean by that is, I showed you customers, invoices, products. Those could be 3 different databases. Okay. One could be SQLite, one could be Postgres, one could be MySQL. You could have a layout like that one that showed the states and the sales reps. Those could be from 2 entirely separate databases. One could be SQLite, and the other could be MySQL, right? So yeah, it's completely up to you.
Fine.
Yes?
How do you upgrade from version 1 to 2?
That's a really good question. I will have instructions on how to do that, but basically you would open you'd put in dbKit 2, the table connection will no longer function. So what you do is just set the layout to a dbKit window and tell it what table that's for. If you have any code in the table connection, you can move that from there to the events for the layout. So it's pretty straightforward. All the rest of it will just work. You don't have to change any class names. It's really just moving the table connection to the layout, and then that's it, you're done. Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. Anything else? Doesn't have to be about dbKit.
Yes. I don't allow my application to talk directly to a database.
Right.
So access a REST application on a host. Will this eventually support some form of REST application?
Yeah, somebody just asked me about that, and yeah, that is absolutely on my list, a very long list. But yes, a REST application, so that basically you would have a REST connection. You'll have to implement, there'll be a class interface that you have to fill in some details, because I can't know what's going on in that application in terms of the API. But once you implement those, then yes, that's the plan, is that dbKit will support that interface. So that's a really good question.
Regarding editing a record,
yeah,
there are 3 additional things I often have. One is to deactivate a record. So if somebody dies, you don't want to delete them off the system because you have So I can make it active, so it doesn't show up.
Yeah.
So deactivate. Another one's duplicate, which just makes life a lot easier if you've got one record, lots of fields.
Yeah.
I want one just the same. Third one is about record locking. So when I save a record, I save the modified date. So if two people edit at once, I don't need to lock them.
Right.
I just go, okay, when they go to save, has this already been saved since I opened it?
Yeah.
So do you handle record locking, duplicates, and inactive?
Yeah, I don't, but send me an email because those are all great features. Locking is something I do want to address, in the shorter term. Problem is there are a lot of different ways to do that. People have different ideas about how locking should work, but I at least want to make it fairly easy for you to do whichever way you want to do it. But send me those in an email, and I'll definitely look at it. Mark, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had just to take the topic to AI.
Yeah.
You mentioned that one of the things like with J3, where and just talk about how new users approach using AI. And one question I just had was sort of like, what's your theory of like a new generation approaches Xojo, AI tells them what to do or how to do it, are they going to never learn the fundamentals of actual coding?
Well, so let me ask this question and answer honestly. Okay? How many of you have coded an application in machine language? Okay, well, that's more than I thought. Okay, there's been 5 of you maybe out of the whole room. Okay? Christian, did you raise your hand? You didn't? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, machine language? Have you ever coded an application in machine language? Okay. Well, no, machine language. Machine language, not assembler. Machine language. Those are not the same thing. Okay. So these, to me, they're all layers of abstraction, right? I could talk about human behavior from the quantum physics level, but that would not be very efficient, right? Well, it's the same thing with programming. We don't program in machine language because that's not very efficient. So then assembler came along. My dad was an electrical engineer. He programmed initially by flipping 8 switches and pressing a button. Yeah. So we've created these additional layers of abstraction. Xojo itself is one big abstraction layer, right? I look at AI being the same sort of thing, right? It's just another layer of abstraction. Now, like any layer of abstraction, the layer itself only takes you so far. So often, well, I don't know often, but there are times when you have to look back one layer, right? Usually not more than one, but you have to look back one layer. So at least now, right now, users are not going to be able to describe an application and have it just, create the whole thing, and they're going to press run, and it's going to work perfectly, and they're going to be done. That's not going to happen, right? That might happen someday, but I suspect that no one in this room will care at that point. We won't be around to care, okay? Or we'll be long past all of this, right? So, yeah, it's just another layer. And one thing I want to say about AI too is that you have to be careful with what you read in the media, because the media's agenda is to sell you ads, or show you ads, rather, right? You've heard the term, if you didn't pay for something, you're not the customer, you're the product, right? And that is 100% true. And what you see in the media are one of 2 stories. AI is going to kill us all, or it's going to bring about utopia. You see those. The reality is not nearly that exciting. It's going to be this gray, mushy area in the middle, right? It's just another tool, and it's probably not going to kill us all, and probably not bring about utopia. It's just going to be another thing we use. I like to say that politics, when politics is working best, it's boring. Boring, right? Because it's that mushy compromise in the middle, right? Well, AI is the same thing. It's in the middle. It's not at the extremes. Yeah.
Brand new user here.
Yeah.
AI, the whole thing. I'm noticing that because there's other tools like Float, like Cursor, you name it, which will actually spit out some code which can run, which is very helpful for someone who knows nothing about nothing.
Yeah.
It feels not intuitive or / confusing when if I have some Xojo code and I want to give it to AI, I save and now it can read it. Now when it gives it back to me, having to close Xojo and reopen Xojo to see the effect,
Yeah.
it's really annoying both for trying to do version control and trying to do any AI. And
Yeah.
is there a way to add a button like a refresh, F5, which will take the context and load it back into memory?
Yeah, I talked about that earlier. We're going to make the Xojo IDE aware of when file changes happen, so that it just does it for you. So you won't need to press a button. When you tell Claude Code or Codex to make a change, the Xojo IDE will detect it and just reload the file.
Well,
behind the
that's
scenes.
that's the future. How about now?
Yeah, right now it's close the project and reopen it. That's the button. Yeah. But we're getting there, and that work is going on right now. So I would fully expect that to be, not in the distant future. I mean, that's in the near term. And yes, that will be helpful for version control as well, right? So, yeah, Derek.
Just do revert to save, saves a bit of time.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah. Was there another question over here? Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Thanks again to Christian and his team for putting the conference together. But most importantly, thank you guys for being users, because we love what we do, and you make that possible, right? I mean, we wouldn't exist as a company if there weren't people that wanted the product. And I can say for myself, being able to do something I love every day that's a dream. So, and I think that's a dream we all share at Xojo. So, thank you very much.